Limited Recourse Borrowing Arrangement, or LRBA is the acronym, and that is a trustee for an SMSF, is an entity or person that makes decisions on behalf of the self-managed super fund. Pension phase is simply the phase in which you are drawing down an income stream from your superannuation fund. This typically will depend on when you were born. If your employer is currently making contributions on your behalf, that is what's called a concessional contribution. Welcome to SMSF Insider, where we help busy professionals to gain financial independence using an SMSF. Hi, I'm Troy, founder of Blue Chip SMSF Services, and over the last 20 years, I've helped thousands of Aussies manage the complexities of self-managed super funds. And in this podcast, I'll answer your questions, break down the myths, so you can take charge of your financial freedom. Let's get into it. G'day guys, and welcome to this edition of SMSF Insider, where we'll be talking about common terminologies with self-managed super funds. So the first one is an SMSF. What is an SMSF? It stands for self-managed super fund. So it's a type of superannuation fund that you can control and you make investment decisions, as opposed to being in a retail or an industry fund where somebody else makes those investment decisions for you. Trustee. So trustee for an SMSF is an entity or person that makes decisions on behalf of the self-managed super fund. So every self-managed super fund needs to have what's called a trustee, and that trustee will make all the investment decisions and all the decisions on behalf of the members of the self-managed superannuation fund. The trustees are typically, if you're a member of a fund, you're also a trustee, and vice versa. If you're a trustee of the self-managed super fund, you're also a member. You shouldn't be a member and not a trustee, and you shouldn't be a trustee and not a member. If you're one, you should also be the other. A beneficiary. So a beneficiary is or are the people that are receiving or the individuals that will receive the benefits of the self-managed super fund or the superannuation fund should a particular member pass away. So with self-managed super funds or most superannuation funds, you'll have what's called a binding death nomination or a non-binding death nomination. Typically, you want to choose a binding death nomination, and that they are the beneficiaries that will receive the funds, or the individuals that will receive the funds in the event that one or all of the members pass away. A rollover. A rollover is simply the funds that are coming from your existing retail or industry fund into your self-managed super fund, or any proceeds that are rolling from one superannuation fund to another. When that process happens, that's called a rollover. Preservation age. Preservation age is the age in which you are able to retire and formally take an income stream from your superannuation fund. A bear trust is a trust that is used, or an entity that's used to purchase assets, typically property, if you have borrowings or have a limited recourse borrowing arrangement. So if you do have sort of borrowings, or you are borrowing using your self-managed super fund, you will need what's called a bear trust, and that bear trust is the entity that does the borrowing on behalf of the SMSF. Once that debt is paid down, then the asset can be transferred from the bear trust and into the self-managed super fund without triggering any stamp duty implications. Accumulation phase is the phase in which you're accumulating your wealth through when you're working all the way up until retirement age. So when you're working, that's called accumulation phase. You're making contributions to your fund, you're investing in different assets to accumulate enough wealth for retirement. Pension phase is simply the phase in which you are drawing down an income stream from your superannuation fund. This typically will depend on when you were born, but certainly there'll be some minimums and maximums that you'll need to draw down during pension phase. So you'll need to reach out to your advisor when it comes to reaching pension phase, so you know what the minimums and maximums are for drawing down pension. Just quickly, guys, if you're a busy professional, fed up with traditional super funds and overwhelmed by the setup of your SMSF, we can help. Book in a call with my team using the link in the show notes, and let's build your future on your terms. Now, back to the episode. Limited Recourse Borrowing Arrangement, or LRBA is the acronym, and that is a fancy name for a loan for your self-managed super fund. So essentially, if you're borrowing money through your self-managed super fund, you will need to, of course, have to use a bare trust, which I've just mentioned, but the loan in which you'll use is called a Limited Recourse Borrowing Arrangement, and that type of loan is fairly limited in terms of who offer these types of loans. There's only a handful of lenders out there that are doing these types of loans, so it's important that you engage a mortgage broker that has experience in this space and knows which lenders to contact in order to help you through this process and help you apply for that limited recourse borrowing arrangement or that loan for your self-managed super fund. So an LRBA is very similar to if you're purchasing an investment property and you go to the bank and ask the bank for a loan for that particular property. It's absolutely identical, if you think of it that way, is when you're purchasing or taking a loan out through your self-managed super fund. You're technically doing the same thing. You're asking for a loan from a lender, and that particular loan needs to be called a limited recourse borrowing arrangement. And they talk about limited recourse so that if something happens and the lender needs to take over some of those assets or repossess some of those assets, it's only limited to that particular asset that they have security over. So the lender can't go in and reclaim or sell down any other assets inside of your fund. They only have limited security over that one particular asset and not the rest of the assets owned by the self-managed super fund. That's why it's called a limited recourse borrowing arrangement. Non-concessional contribution is another term for a non-deductible contribution. So at the moment, the limit for non-concessional contributions is $120,000 per year. You can also roll forward 3 years, so you can roll in up to $360,000 in 1 year, and then that just means you can't put any more non-concessional contributions into the fund for the next 3 years. So if there's an asset that you're wanting to purchase and you have money outside of super that you're wanting to contribute to purchase that particular asset, you can make what's called a non-concessional contribution to help you purchase that asset. Because the tax has already been paid on that money, there'll be no contributions tax applicable when you do actually make that contribution to your self-managed super fund. A concessional contribution is a tax-deductible contribution, and the current limit is $30,000 per annum. So if your employer is currently making contributions on your behalf, that is what's called a concessional contribution. If you aren't with your employer contributions, for example, if you have $10,000 a year going into your super fund from your employer, then you have an additional $20,000 that you can contribute to your SMSF for that particular year. You can make an additional $20,000 contribution to top up and meet that contribution cap for that particular year. In addition to that, you can also go back retrospectively 5 years. So if you haven't reach your concessional contribution cap for the last 5 years, you can also go back and make additional contributions for those years and claim a tax deduction for those years also. So before doing those types of strategies and going back and making additional contributions, make sure you reach out to a professional or your advisor to help you through that, making those contributions, whether they be concessional or non-concessional contributions. So the difference between concessional and non-concessional, apart from the caps, non-concessional has a cap of $120,000 per year. A concessional cap has a cap of $30,000 per year. When you're making concessional contributions, the main difference is you'll pay what's called contributions tax of 15%. So with a non-concessional, you won't pay contributions tax because you would have already paid tax on the money outside of super. So they're the main differences. One attracts contributions tax and the other one doesn't. So they're all the different terminologies when it comes to self-managed superannuation funds. If there's some other terminology you're not sure of, please drop a comment in the comment section below and we'll be sure to answer that question as soon as we possibly can. Thank you for tuning in to this edition of SMSF Insider. Thanks for listening. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of SMSF Insider. If you got value from this, make sure you subscribe so you never miss the strategies we share to help you take control of your financial future. Find us on socials at Blue Chip SMSF or book a call with our team to see if we can help you.